Part 73. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 721. Chapter 721. The Crown Princess is mighty. Fan Kinjao followed Yan Hanbei as he walked inside, looking around at the scenery of the palace. The princes are divided into princes and county princes, and the prince's palace is also divided into 3, 6, or 9 levels. Compared with other palaces, it is obvious that the Pinglai Palace is a bit small, but the scenery inside is still elegant. Along the way, you can see green branches and leaves of flowers, plants, and rugged rock areas everywhere. At this time, many guests have come to the garden. They had not seen such an exciting scene at the entrance of the mansion, but now looking at the Crown Princess walking into the garden accompanied by Princess Pinglai and Prince Pinglai, who wouldn't feel envious in their hearts. Seeing that the garden was full of female relatives, Yan Hanbei told Fan Kinjao softly, "The second prince and his concubines have already arrived and are sitting in the flower hall inside. You go over first, and I will go there after seeing off the eldest prince." Fan Kinjao knew that today was the host of Prince Pinglai's mansion, and both Yan Hanbei and Prince Pinglai were busy entertaining guests, so he nodded and walked towards the depths of the garden. A chuckle suddenly sounded not far away. The Crown Princess is the Crown Princess, and she is always cheered by everywhere she goes. With this kind of pomp, I am afraid that even the current queen will be inferior to her. Fan Kinjao stopped following the sound, turned around, and saw Mrs Yao walking over with a fake smile on her face. Next to Mrs Yao was a young woman with her head lowered, making it difficult to see her appearance. Since the last time he had a falling out with Mrs Yao at Hua's house because of Xiao Hongfei's marriage, Fan Kinjao saw Mrs Yao for the first time. After not seeing each other for a long time, his face, which was not very kind at first, became a bit more mean. It's just that this meanness is of no use to Fan Kinjao. Even though I have not yet been married, I am the crown princess conferred by the emperor himself. Even if I don't mention this status, my adoptive father is the current king of Heshuo County. Mrs Yao's wife did not bow to me when she saw me, nor did she say hello. You dare to mention the queen? Forgive me for being ignorant. Is this the tutor of the Xiao family? Mrs Yao. Little bitch, your mouth is still as vicious as ever. The woman who was following Mrs Yao suddenly raised her head and looked at Fan Kinjao, her eyes full of surprise, but she quickly lowered her head again. It's just a few acquaintances who met and joked a little. Could it be that the crown princess can't even joke? Mrs Yao's words were unforgiving, but she still bent her knees with reluctance on her face. Fan Kinjao accepted Mrs Yao's greetings with peace of mind and said with a faint smile, "You have to differentiate between jokes. Not everyone can joke with me. Besides, I don't think I am really familiar with Mrs Yao. I think back then, the crown princess was engaged to my family, Hongfei. How can we say we are not familiar with our relationship? I don't remember when I got engaged to young Master Xiao, but I still remember some things about young Master Xiao's stalking. If Mrs Yao forgets, I don't mind telling Mrs Yao everything I know. Everything is endless." Mrs Yao's face changed color. She didn't expect that Fan Kinjao wouldn't give her any face. Fan Kinjao looked at Mrs Yao calmly, not even thinking about giving her face. Everyone in the garden watched eagerly. After all, Mrs Yao is the mother of the current young minister of Dali Temple. Although the crown princess has a higher status, she has never passed the exam. She has to worry about her reputation. What do you think that the prince's mouth is the soul, which is exactly the face of Mrs Yao's face on the ground? The woman who was following Mrs Yao raised her head again and stared at Fan Kinjao blankly, her eyes in disbelief mixed with a hint of inexplicable longing and envy. Mrs Yao felt a sharp edge piercing her back. She resisted the urge to strangle Fan Kinjao and pulled the arm of the woman next to her. "I heard that King Pinglai hosted a banquet today. I just brought my future daughter-in-law here to see the world. Why should the crown princess be so aggressive? Madame Xiao said, grabbing the woman's arm again, her long nails digging into the woman's flesh. Hurry up and see the crown princess. The woman trembled in pain and called out like a mosquito, Princess. This is the second daughter of Pingjiang in Yuchen. Although she is a little inferior compared to my son, the crown princess should understand that our Xiao family has never paid attention to such things. Ms. Xiao's wife smiled as if to show off, clearly saying that even if Fan Qinjiao is the princess, she should still look down on her. Fan Qinjiao looked at the woman who was in pain but did not dare to say anything. His eyes darkened, but he quickly looked at Ms. Xiao and said, if it had been yesterday, maybe the daughter of the Yuchen family would have surpassed Xiao, young master, but today we have to talk about something else. What does the crown princess mean by this? Before I came here, I accidentally heard the news that Mr. Xiao of the Xiao family had perjured himself when he was the young minister of Dali Temple. He had been stripped of his official position by the emperor and was severely punished with 30 years imprisonment. Ms. Xiao's eyes widened in shock. You are talking nonsense. Whether this is nonsense or not, you will know as soon as Ms. Xiao returns to the house. If you calculate it, the trip to the 30 battles will take at least half an hour. If Ms. Xiao goes back now, she will probably catch up with being sent back to the house. The young master of the Xiao family. Ms. Xiao was completely panicked after hearing this. She didn't even care about the eyes of the people around her, and hurriedly walked out. The woman who was following Madame Xiao suddenly turned back and looked at the crown princess who was still standing there. Since her engagement, she was sent to the Xiao family in the main city by her father. The Xiao family's wife was already a strong person, and because her family was not as powerful as the Xiao family, they suppressed her everywhere. Originally, she had given up hope of free shipping, but if Xiao Hongfei was really stripped of his official position, her father would definitely regret the marriage. Fan Qinjiao looked at the hope rising again in the woman's eyes and smiled lightly. The woman did not expect that the crown princess would take the initiative to smile at her. While she was overjoyed, she also thought about how her future mother-in-law had just been criticized to the point of doubting her life. This was really the most relaxing day for her since she came to the main city. Sincerely, the woman nodded slightly to Fan Qinjiao, expressing her true gratitude. The farce in the garden came to an end with the departure of Ms. Xiao. Fan Qinjiao turned around and walked towards the flower pavilion again. Who would have thought that before he could walk in, he would see heads poking out of the door of the flower pavilion one after another, the second prince's concubine, the eighth prince's concubine, and the sixth prince's concubine. Han Jingchen. It's really lively. When several people saw Fan Qinjiao approaching, they all gave a thumbs up in awe. The crown princess is mighty. Fan Qinjiao. I really want to pretend I don't know them. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 722. Chapter 722. What is she here to do? The sisters-in-law chatted endlessly when they met. Yan Hanbei also had the intention to free up the flower pavilion for a few people, and no one else came in. Fan Qinjiao sat down with a few others and saw Han Jingchen heaving a sigh of relief. Finally, I can come out for some air. You don't know how annoying that little brat of mine is. If possible, I really want to kill him, put it back in my belly and let it stay for a few more years. Fan Qinjiao. Wouldn't that be Neza? The second prince's concubine was also pregnant, but it was a little later than the first prince's concubine. Now she was not pregnant at all. Listening to the sixth prince's concubine's complaints, she hurriedly asked around for advice. Fan Qinjiao was not interested in this topic and sat aside quietly drinking tea. The eighth prince's concubine suddenly came over and said mysteriously, "The princess is still angry with the eighth prince." Fan Qinjiao looked at the cautious face of the eighth prince's concubine, and then remembered that Ningan actually talked about how she was embarrassed by the 8th prince at the gate of the palace. It's all in the past, so why bother mentioning it again? Because of his mother's safety and the many things that happened later, Fan Kinjao forgot about the 8th prince. Later, when he remembered it, the 8th prince was the prince had already asked for orders to go to the south. The 8th princess breathed a sigh of relief. Don't worry, princess. I write to the 8th prince every month, telling him to do a good job in the south and share the worries of his highness. If the 8th prince does something stupid again, I will be the first to do it. One rushed over and killed him. Fan Kinjao was told that he was confused. What does the 8th prince have to do with the prince if he goes to the south? The 8th prince's concubine was startled. The princess doesn't know. Fan Kinjao always laughed when asked, what should I know? The 8th princess looked at Fan Kinjao's expression and saw that she really didn't know anything about it, so she told her about the day when the crown prince went to concubine Jiangshu's palace and sent the 8th prince to the south for training. Princess, are you right? See, I heard my mother-in-law say that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince at that time was so brave that he almost frightened the 8th prince to the point of being unable to stand. As the 8th princess spoke, she still remembered her mother-in-law's description at that time, pretending to be a prince, and said, "You are my brother, I can tolerate you no matter what, but if you hurt the princess even a little bit, I will definitely punish you 10,000 times. Want to come back?" Fan Kinjao. There is really no need to repeat this kind of statement. I didn't expect that His Highness the Crown Prince would go so far for the Crown Princess, but it would be a good idea to let the 8th prince go to the south. My mother-in-law told me that when I see the Crown Princess, I must apologize to the Crown Princess. The princess was really lucky. The fool in her family went to the house to uncover the tiles without being beaten for 3 days. Now it would be better if he was sent out by the prince, so that she would not have to worry about it. Fan Kinjao really didn't know about this, but if she thought about it carefully, there was something else she didn't understand. Huaishang is also in the south, and the 8th prince has also gone to the south. Is it really such a coincidence? Of course it's impossible. This time, the 8th prince requested orders from the emperor to go to the south. Once he met his uncles in the south, even if the 8th prince wanted to report the matter to the court, he would not dare to report it. With the emperor's suspicion, as long as this matter was leaked, the 8th prince would definitely follow those who eat melons and fall. So, the 8th prince was basically pressed on the head and put on the boat of the prince's party. Seeing Fan Kinjao's delay in speaking, the 8th prince's concubine paused and said, "Speaking of this matter, it is also the 8th prince's fault. Don't worry, princess. My mother-in-law said that since you have done something wrong, you must pay the price. Your Highness, let alone sending the 8th prince to the south, it is appropriate to send him abroad." These words are obviously expressing your attitude. Fan Kinjao came back to his senses and said with a smile, "It would be good to let the 8th prince go out for some training, but I heard that the south is not very peaceful recently." When the 8th prince's concubine writes to the 8th prince, she still has to remind him to pay attention to his safety. "Don't worry, Crown Princess, I will do it." The 8th princess breathed a sigh of relief. She was really afraid that the Crown Princess would not be able to overcome this obstacle. After all, she heard at the time that the wife of the Sun family was quite dangerous. Fortunately, the Crown Princess was a measured person. Complain with that fool in her family. As he was talking, he saw someone else walking in. The people sitting in the flower hall looked up and saw Panyulu leading Fan Swinning through the door. Panyulu is the 3rd prince's concubine. Regardless of the discord among the princes, it is normal for the 3rd prince's concubine to come forward to maintain a superficial appearance. But Fan Swinning is just an ant, so why would she join in the fun on such an occasion? Han Jingchen has never been accustomed to other people's problems. When he saw Panyulu, he said, "Today is a banquet at Prince Pinglei's residence. Isn't it not good for the 3rd prince to bring the ant from the residence here?" Pan Yu said with a smile, if it were someone else, I wouldn't bring her here to show off my shame, but Aunt Fan from our house had some friendship with Princess Pinglay before, so now I want to come to congratulate you. Han Jingchen sneered, when I was the eldest princess, I didn't see such affection. Now that I'm Princess Pinglay, I just stick to it. If this person is shameless, he is really invincible. The smile on Pan Yulu's face remained unchanged, and she greeted the second and eighth princesses affectionately. Even when she saw Fan Kinjao, her face was full of spring. If it weren't for the tightly squeezed handkerchief in her hand, it would have changed. After seeing the shape, I really thought it was invulnerable. Fan Swining followed Pan Yulu obediently and saluted the other princes and concubines together. However, when passing by Fan Kinjao, she was wise enough not to humiliate herself. She just bent her knees and sat aside with Pan Yulu. The eighth prince's concubine looked at the third prince's concubine and Aunt Fan, who were not far away, frowned and said, Aunt Fan's belly is quite big too. Why don't you just raise your baby in the palace at this time? Why are you hanging around here? Fan Kinjao glanced at it and said, I'm afraid he couldn't help himself. Fan Kinjao certainly understands Fan Swining's temperament. She is just a little ant. If she no longer has any heirs by her side, even if all the agencies have exhausted her plans, the road ahead will become increasingly difficult. Fan Swining will not fail to understand such a simple truth. However, Pan Yulu is the third prince's concubine after all, so as long as Fan Swining is asked to do many things, Fan Swining cannot refuse. It seems that the third prince already knew the news about the beheading and Xiao Hongfei's stripping of his official position. Now that Pan Yulu and Fan Swining are allowed to come together, it is very likely that he wants to win over King Pinglay by reminiscing with Yan Hanbei. Although Bailey Fengming did not hand over the evidence to the emperor, it would be more fatal for the third prince to use the help of the minister of Dali Temple to get rid of Xiao Hongfei and Wan Qinshan's men. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 723. Chapter 723. It's haunted. Whether it is the third prince's party or the prince's party, although there are many followers, everyone has their own interests hidden in their hearts. Now those who work for the third prince have trouble happening under the third prince's nose. Aren't the other ministers standing behind the third prince afraid that one day it will be their turn? I think I'm afraid. So now Bailey Rongs is also in a state of distress. It is estimated that Bailey Rongs was worried about losing people's hearts because of this incident, so he planned to win over King Pinglay, so as to comfort himself, which was a gain and a loss. Fan Swining listened to the conversation between Fan Kinjao and the eighth prince's concubine, and clenched her hands under her sleeves. Of course she didn't want to come, but that Pan Yulu insisted on mentioning her friendship with Princess Pinglay in front of the third prince. For his own little benefit, the third prince actually didn't even care about the child in her belly. Just let Pan Yulu bring her out. Fan Swining knew how difficult it was to conceive this child, so she had to protect the child in her belly no matter what. Due to Pan Yulu's arrival, the originally bustling flower hall became deserted. Although Han Jingchen and the eighth prince's concubine were still talking to Fan Kinjao, they would deliberately avoid Pan Yulu. In the final analysis, since they, the crown princess, are all aware of it, there is no need to pretend anymore. Of course Pan Yulu knew what was going on and was used to it, so she took the second prince and concubine beside her to greet her and said, I heard that the second prince was recently sent to the Ministry of Rites by the emperor. I think he will be busy after he comes. The second prince's concubine said softly, what the third prince's concubine said is true, but it's better to be busy and have a family, and it's not good to just be a prince. The child in my belly will be born next year. If I just eat the prince's salary is okay if it is small, but it will be difficult to support it when it is older. When Panula heard the word child, her heart felt as if she had been pricked by an awl. If it hadn't been for that accident, her belly would have become pregnant. Almost forcing a smile, Panula looked at the second prince and concubine again. She wanted to speak again, but the second prince and concubine suddenly stood up. Fan Kinjao was chatting happily when he saw the second princess walking in front of her. The sun is getting too strong, and it's too hot to sit at the door. I wonder if the princess can give me a seat. The second princess smiled kindly. This may sound like a joke, but the taste is different when you taste it carefully. For calculating, the second prince's concubine was not short, but he has always been a good old man who is with the mud. Now he suddenly leaves Panulu and come to Fan Kinjao. Unless you are blind and cannot see it, the second princess wants to take sides with the crown princess. Fan Kinjao didn't know the reason why the second prince and concubine suddenly stood in line, but since people were walking in front of her, she certainly wouldn't refuse. She smiled and motioned for the second prince and concubine to sit next to the eighth prince and concubine. Seeing the second prince's buttocks sitting on the flower bench, Panulu's face darkened instantly. If it were before, she would have been able to shout a word or two with Fan Kinjao, but now where does Panulu have the confidence? He almost suppressed his anger and looked away, but now the only person on Panulu's side was Fanswinning. In a blink of an eye, Panulu saw Fanswinning next to her. Fanswinning was still smiling in a good-natured manner, but her heart was filled with cold snoring. I knew that I screamed in the house, but it was not the same as a quail in front of Fan Kinjao. Fortunately, not long after, Yan Hanbei came to invite people to have a banquet in the front hall. As soon as Yan Hanbei saw Fanswinning, he felt a twitch in his heart. However, today was her big day to move into a new house, and she didn't have to make herself unhappy just because of one person. Everyone stood up and walked out. Fan Kinjao walked to Yan Hanbei's side calmly. Keep an eye on the third prince's concubine carefully. I'm worried that she will be restless today. Yan Hanbei was stunned. What did you see? It's not that I saw anything. The child in the third prince's belly disappeared without any reason. I'm worried that I won't be too calm today. Fan Kinjao doesn't think that Panulu really has such good intentions. Take Fanswinning out with you. Hearing this, Yan Hanbei almost vomited in disgust. No matter how Panulu and Fanswinning fight in the mansion, it is a matter within the third prince's mansion. Now if something happens here, will she still lose her reputation as Prince Pinglai? I know, I will keep an eye on it all the time. Yan Hanbei gritted her teeth. If it weren't for the fact that King Pinglai had just started to improve and his confidence was not so strong, she really wanted to kick both Panulu and Fanswinning. Go back to the third prince's mansion. Fan Kinjao nodded and followed everyone out of the flower hall without saying anything else. At this time, the front hall was already full of guests. Yan Hanbei took his sisters-in-law and a few others from the back door directly into the main hall from the alley, and sat in a room that had been arranged long ago. The house is not big, but it is well ventilated on all sides and faces the lake on the east side. Sitting in it to eat is nothing more than an elegant affair. Yan Hanbei also had to greet the guests outside. When the food was all served, he let everyone eat first. Han Jingchen looked at Yan Hanbei's busy back and felt really happy. People, when you are busy, you want to be idle, but when you are really idle, you realize that the best thing is to be busy. Hearing this, Fan Kinjao quickly added a salt and pepper shrimp and put it into her plate. It's just a meal. How can you be so sentimental? I'm telling the truth, Han Jingchen muttered and threw the shrimp into his mouth. Well, it was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. It really tasted good. If we say busy, Feng Cheng and Nancheng are really busy recently. The second princess suddenly spoke. Hearing this, Han Jingchen and the eighth prince's concubine looked at the second prince's concubine curiously. Fan Kinjao had heard Bailey Fengming mention it before. Now he looked at the second princess and asked, I heard about Feng Cheng and Nanjing. Even the people in the court did not dare to criticize easily. The second princess is where did you get the news? The second princess clenched the chopsticks in her hands, the princess doesn't know something. My maternal grandfather's home is Feng Cheng. The current Feng Cheng Pingjiang is my maternal grandfather's apprentice. Now Feng Cheng can be said to be in panic. The whole city was empty, and all the people who could run ran to seek refuge elsewhere. The rest who had no way to go could only hide in their homes all day long. No one dared to walk around the streets casually, even in broad daylight. Fan Kinjao frowned, it's so serious, but what kind of plague is it? The second princess sighed, if only it was really a plague, it's Feng Cheng and Nanjing that are haunted. The people sitting here are all flowers in high-end mansions that have never experienced wind and rain. Now, even if the sun is piercing the back, Leng Ran is scared to break out in a cold sweat when he hears the word haunted. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 724. Chapter 724. Something happened at Prince Pinglei's mansion. Fan Swinning looked down at her swollen belly, stood up and sat far away. The ones who are doing this are the most inferior princesses. With her current status, no matter how displeased she is, she can't stop her by speaking out for fear of disturbing the child in her belly. Pan Yulu frowned and watched Fan Swinning sit far away, obviously unhappy. Fan Swinning was bullied, of course she was happy. But now that Fan Swinning is so aggrieved, doesn't it mean that the third prince's residence is not tough enough? Her face, the third prince's concubine, is naturally dull. When he looked at the second prince and concubine again, Pan Yulu's words were a little serious, the second prince and concubine is so good, why should she use lies to confuse the public? How can there be talk of ghosts and ghosts under the emperor's feet? I can't see it, but the rumors spread by ignorant people. The second princess's words were stuck in her throat when she reached her mouth, and her face turned pale. The second prince did not have as important a position as the third prince, so she did not dare to talk back in front of the third prince's concubine. Han Jingchen heard what she was interested in, so she was naturally unhappy to be interrupted like this. But before she could speak, she heard Fan Kinjao on the side say, we are just telling stories, so why should the third prince and his concubine do anything, seriously? Pan Yulu. Do you really think she is a fool? We are both from Nanjing and Feng Cheng. Does the crown princess really not know about the city next to the main city, or is she here with her eyes open and fooling me like a 3-year-old doll? Whether it is Feng Cheng or Nanjing, there is a saying of repeated names. This applies to people's names, let alone place names. If the third prince and concubine really wants to say that we are not telling stories, there is nothing we can do. As the saying goes, those who purify themselves will purify themselves. If something is turbid, it will be turbid. If it is not turbid, why not do it? Hearing this, Pan Yulu was so angry that she wanted to lift the table. You are obviously talking about Feng Cheng and Nanjing, but you still stare and refuse to admit it? Fan Kinjao is calm and composed. She just plainly refuses to admit it, so what can you do to me? Han Jingchen was about to laugh to death. There are some people here. If they are not as good as others, they just go and cool off. If they insist on coming forward to join in the fun, is it because they are too thick-skinned to resist being beaten? The eighth prince's concubine had long been accustomed to the crown prince's aura. She looked at the second prince's concubine and asked, Second prince, please continue. We are all listening. Don't worry, it's just a story. No one is really so calculating. Don't take it seriously. Pan Yulu. What a rabble. The second princess was really anxious. After all, her maternal grandfather's family was in Feng Cheng. Now the court has always been ambiguous about this matter. She was really depressed and uncomfortable, so she wanted to share it with others. I heard that Nanchinj was the first to cause trouble. This person who was fine disappeared out of thin air on the road. At first, no one paid much attention to it, but those who disappeared never came back. In addition, the company was still there later. The infancy of children started to get into trouble, so the government started to pay more attention to it. Fan Kinjao frowned. What did the local government say? The people reported it to the officials and the Yamen opened a case for investigation, but there was still no clue. People were still missing in the city one after another. Then it was Feng Qin's turn. At first, Nanchinj was still covering up the matter. Later, when something happened in Fengcheng, he told Fengcheng after ventilating the air, it turns out that what happened in the two cities can be said to be exactly the same. So, as long as you are a human being, you will disappear. It doesn't seem to be the case. I heard my grandfather wrote that adults and infant children will disappear, but half-grown children will never disappear. It's just that small cities like Nanchinj and Fengcheng are not as safe as the main city. It's incomparable. Ping Zhang from Nanchinj and Fengcheng had no choice but to come to see the saint in person, hoping to send people from the imperial court to investigate. With the universe at the feet of the emperor, who could have imagined that such a thing would happen? In broad daylight, a good living person just disappeared from the world. Now, no one is alive or dead, and no corpses are seen. Just thinking about the scene is enough to make people's hair stand on end. Han Jingchen has always prided himself on being bold, but now he has to stay close to Fan Kinjao. Not to mention the eighth princess, who was so frightened that she trembled. If it is really ghosts, we should ask the abbot of the Hyoguo temple to go there. I think I will have to perform some rituals. Fan Kinjao remained silent and did not speak. This thing sounds strange, but from her point of view, it may not really be related to ghosts. Although the people of Ziliang all believe in ghosts and gods, if Ping Zhang in Nanchinj and Fengcheng really believed that they were haunted, why bother to come to the main city to meet the saints? How easy would it be to go directly to Hyoguo temple? I'm afraid that Ping Zhang from Nanchinj and Fengcheng has evidence that no one else knows and that may be artificial, so he is so anxious to enter the palace to meet the saint. It's just that the emperor's attitude is unclear now, and I'm afraid there won't be a decision on this matter for a while. Plop. A sudden sound of water startled the people in the main hall. Soon, everyone heard someone shouting at the top of their lungs, "Oh no! Someone has fallen into the water." In the house where Fan Kinjao was staying, one could see the artificial lake not far away from the window lattice. Several people stood by the window and looked around, and saw Princess Pinglay running towards the place where the person fell. Behind Princess Pinglay, there were many people following, but compared to Princess Pinglay's expression, these people were all watching the excitement with curious faces. At the end of the day, it's not that something happened in these people's houses, so they naturally took their time. Furthermore, now that King Pinglay has made a comeback, is there really no one who is jealous? To put it bluntly, now that something is happening in Prince Pingla's palace, who wouldn't be eagerly watching the excitement? Fan Kinjao didn't even think about it, and the first thing he did was to walk out the door. Han Jingchen, the eighth prince's concubine and the second prince's concubine looked at Fan Kinjao's back and hurriedly followed him. Pan Yulo slowly stood up and was about to go out as well, but saw that Fan Swinning had no intention of getting up. There's something going on in Prince Pinglay's palace. And Fan doesn't want to go over and have a look. Fan Swinning was sitting on the flower bench with no intention of getting up. "I can't go through because of my physical inconvenience." Pan Yulo sneered, "I remember, didn't Aunt Fan always say that she had a good relationship with Princess Pinglay? But now that something happened, her first thought was to protect herself. So I can understand why Pinglay the princess values the princess so much." Fan Swinning sat on the flower bench and remained silent. Pan Yulo paused and continued, "After all, compared with Aunt Fan's indifference, The crown princess is indeed very affectionate and righteous enough, and she also has the heart and courage to ignore past grudges. Fan Swinning's face turned pale. Aren't the third princes and concubines also the ones who were compared to the crown prince? They are all stepped on by Fan Kinjao, who is more advanced than whom? Pan Yula gritted her teeth and said with a smile, the reason why His Highness agreed to Aunt Fan coming today is because he hoped to use Aunt Fan's relationship with me and Princess Pinglay to try to draw His Highness closer to King Pinglay. Now Fan, I have no objection to my aunt sitting here, but if His Highness asks, I will tell the truth. Seeing Pan Yula walk out of the room, Fan Swinning had no choice but to stand up. She didn't want to go, but if the third prince really asked her about it when she returned to the palace, how would she explain it? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 725. Chapter 725. The Shocking Princess. The distance from the main hall to the lake is not very far. As soon as Fan Kinjao walked off the bridge, he heard a woman's voice wailing, I don't care, today we are rushing to Prince Pinglay's mansion, and now my daughter has done something like this before she got married. Prince Pinglay must give me an explanation. Yan Hanbei's face looked very ugly. After all, he was still pregnant, so he could only let the maid behind him help the daughter in the lady's arms to change clothes. But the lady hugged her daughter and refused to let go. She had to give an explanation to Prince Pinglay one by one. Fan Kinjao walked through the crowd and saw a woman sitting by the lake. With this woman Fan Kinjao, she is the wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant, and I have met her several times at banquets in the palace before. Let's look at the daughter in the arms of the wife of the Hanlin Academy. She looks about 17 or 18 years old. At this age, for ordinary people, she is considered an older girl to be married. Prince Pinglay's house killed someone. Prince Pinglay's house killed someone. Fortunately, it was discovered in time, otherwise my poor daughter would have been swallowed to the point of losing her bones and she wouldn't even know it. The wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant had a loud voice. Coupled with the heartbreaking crying, it was really shocking and made me cry. Some ladies who stood aside to watch the excitement had to cover their ears. Yan Hanbei's face turned pale with anger. If she had the same temper before, she would have kicked the person out long ago. But things are different now. My husband is the first to be crowned king. If something bad happens and the emperor is embarrassed, it will still be the couple who will suffer. But Yan Hanbei really had a headache when faced with such a persistent and unreasonable wife at the Hanlin Academy. Suddenly, a hand held her hand. Yan Hanbei turned around and saw Fan Kinjao standing beside her. The moment she saw Fan Kinjao, Yan Hanbei's heart suddenly became quiet. She couldn't explain why, but as long as Fan Kinjao was there, she knew that no matter how difficult things were, Fan Kinjao could handle them properly. You have to follow rules when doing things, and you have to be reasonable when you are a person. When the wife of the Hanlin Academy opened her mouth, it was because the Pinglay Palace killed people, and when she closed her mouth, it was because the Pinglay Palace killed people. Then I was curious. When the Imperial Academy lady saw it, she saw the daughter of the noble family being pushed in. Are the people in the lake from Prince Pinglay? The wife of the imperial court lady who was immersed in crying was interrupted. She originally had a look of displeasure on her face, but when she followed the voice and looked at the face of the visitor, she had to retract her temper no matter how angry she was. The current crown princess, even if she has not passed the test, is not something she can afford to challenge. The minister is just discussing the matter. Why should the crown princess be so stern? The wife of the Hanlin Academy lowered her head. She was completely different from the aggressive person who made trouble just now. Now she seemed to have been wronged a lot. Since the Imperial Academy's wife said that we should discuss matters as they arise, then let's discuss matters as they arise. Fan Kinjao said, turning to look at Yan Hanbei next to him, I would like to ask Princess Pinglay to check carefully how the daughter of the Hanlin Academy fell into the trap. There are many people in the mansion today. As long as you inquire carefully, you will find out, will know the ins and outs. Now, the wife of the imperial concubine quit her job. What do you mean, princess? My daughter has fallen into the water, so do you still want to examine my daughter like a prisoner? Besides, my daughter is still waiting to be married. If this matter gets out, will my daughter still be a human being? The daughter of the Hanlin Academy's attendant, who had been silent, suddenly choked up and said, I am the one who has embarrassed my mother. Don't worry, mother, if the trouble really becomes known to everyone, my daughter will definitely die to prove it of innocence. This is going to kill people. Fan Kinjao's face darkened, and he threatened to die. What did he want to do? Simply don't be too obvious. Of course, Yan Hanbei was afraid that things would get serious. He pulled Fan Kinjao and said softly, if it doesn't work, let someone come up first. It's not always good to keep the stalemate going. Fan Kinjao lowered his eyes slightly, and out of the corner of his eye suddenly caught sight of the scratches on the arm of his daughter, a student at the Hanlin Academy. Seeing that the crown princess had stopped speaking, the madam attendant of the Hanlin Academy raised a proud smile. Princess Pinglay still understands the truth. If this matter can be resolved, I hope that the big issue will be reduced to a small one. Yan Hanbei was too lazy to talk to the wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant, and hurriedly asked someone to help the mother and daughter up. But just as they were about to leave, Fan Kinjao suddenly held the wrist of the Hanlin Academy's attendant's daughter. The hair on the whole body of the lady at the Hanlin Academy stood on end, and she looked at Fan Kinjao warily. Is it true that the crown princess is being irrational and is going to take action? Fan Kinjao said calmly, why do you need to take action when dealing with someone like the wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant? MRS attendant of the Hanlin Academy, what are these words? The lake is surrounded by moss. If you really fell into the water accidentally, even an ordinary man would not be able to keep climbing on the shore, let alone someone as powerful as the daughter of your house. She is a woman, but the scratches on the arms of the daughter of your noble family are so obvious. They are obviously caused by scratching on the gravel on the shore. As Fan Kinjao spoke, he raised the arms of his daughter, a member of the Hanlin Academy, with a broad hand. Once the sleeves slipped off, the obvious scratches on his arms were revealed. The wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant had a trace of panic in her eyes. I don't know what the crown princess means. Fan Kinjao smiled coldly, it doesn't matter if the imperial lady's wife doesn't understand, but I believe the people in the government will understand. I'm afraid there should be such scratches on the arm of the Imperial Academy's lady. Everyone really gasped when they heard this. What does it mean that both mother and daughter have scratches on their arms? It shows that when her daughter fell into the lake, the mother firmly grabbed her daughter's arm on the shore. However, when everyone came following the sound just now, they clearly remembered that the lady of the Hanlin Academy came a few minutes later than they did. By the time the lady of the Hanlin Academy stood here, everyone had already been rescued. So, where did the injury on the wrist come from? Of course, it falls when someone is pushed down. Fan Kinjao stared at the face of the imperial lady's wife. Princess Pinglay is pregnant, and King Pinglay has never taken a concubine. Under such conditions, it really makes people feel a lot more unrealistic. It's not impossible to have ideas, but it's really rare to see someone as ruthless as the Imperial Academy's wife. It is estimated that the wife of the Hanlin Academy's attendant wanted to use her daughter's innocence as a threat, so that the people of the Pinglay Palace would have to keep her, so she designed such a play, but she did not expect that the daughter of the Imperial Academy's attendant was too. He was so timid that after being pushed into the water by his mother, he held on to her mother's hand and did not dare to let go. Mrs. Hanlin's face was livid. She gritted her teeth and said, "The crown princess is just talking and slandering me. Could it be that the crown princess's upbringing is not good enough?" Fan Kinjao didn't even look at the wife of the imperial concubine, but said to Yan Hanbei, "Princess Pinglai, please report to the official position." The wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant. "I want to hold on, but it's obvious that I can't hold on anymore." He could only lower his head and admit his mistake. It would be bad if this matter alerted the government. "Please also ask the Crown Princess not to make a big deal out of this matter because my little girl has never been married." Fan Kinjao looked at the Imperial Lady's lady, and after a while he said, "Then I'll ask the Imperial Lady to write a deed in her own hand. In this way, both the Imperial Palace Lady and the Prince of Pinglai will be happy." Of the wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant. Is this princess a devil? The wife of the Imperial Academy's attendant really had no choice but to obediently take her daughter and go down with the housekeeper of Pinglai Palace to write the declaration and deed. Everyone looked at the dejected appearance of the mother and daughter, the attendants of the Hanlin Academy, as they left with their tails between their legs, and they all followed the deception in their hearts. Sure enough, the Crown Princess is still the familiar Crown Princess. Behind the ordinary attitude, there are always hidden methods and courage that make people laugh. Yan Hanbei was really lucky that Fan Kinjao was in charge today, otherwise she would have had to bite the bullet and keep the man. After all, in Ziliang, it was normal for men to take concubines. Out of the corner of my eye, I suddenly saw someone moving in the crowd in the distance. Yan Hanbei took a closer look and saw that Pan Yulu had walked behind Fan Swinning at some point, with a pair of slightly raised hands pushing towards Fan Swinning's back. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 726. Chapter 726. What kind of monsters are these? Pan Yulu looked at Fan Swinning, who was so close, and her heart twitched with hatred. She still clearly remembered how Fan Swinning caused her to lose her child. Now she finally got the opportunity, and of course she would not miss it. With just a stretch of her hand, she could avenge her child. As long as you reach out your hand. The third prince's concubine is here. A hand suddenly pinched Pan Yulu's wrist tightly. Pan Yulu looked at Yan Hanbei, who appeared next to her in shock, and couldn't recover for a long time. Yan Hanbei was obviously standing there just now. How come in the blink of an eye? If it weren't for Fan Kinjao's previous reminder, Yan Hanbei would naturally not have discovered Pan Yulu's little move. No one knows how lucky Yan Hanbei is now that he and Fan Kinjao are on the same front. Especially looking at Pan Yulu's shocked look, Yan Hanbei felt that he must have been kicked in the head by a donkey before, so he was so stupid that he kept being an enemy of Fan Kinjao. What does Princess Pinglai want to do? Pan Yulu looked at her wrist that was grabbed by Pan Yulu. Although she didn't explain it, anyone who knew it would understand. Yan Hanbei smiled and said, "The road beside the lake is slippery. It is not safe for the third prince or Aunt Fan to stand here. Now that Aunt Fan is pregnant, I have to be careful to remind her." Fan Swinning's heart skipped a beat, and she looked at Pan Yulu in shock and confusion. No wonder she insisted on bringing her over, but she said that Pan Yulu was not so kind and that he was indeed plotting against the child in her belly. Pan Yulu's face was extremely ugly. She was one step away from avenging her child. Why did Yan Hanbei stop her? As far as I know, Princess Pinglai used to be loyal, but now she has become so willing to meddle in others' affairs. Sure enough, everyone will change. Yan Hanbei listened to Pan Yulu's sarcasm and wanted to kick him. When she was demoted to a commoner along with the eldest prince, both Pan Yulu and Fan Swinning complained, but she didn't hate anything. But now Yan Hanbei really hates him. Hate myself for being blind in the first place and being able to be friends with someone with such a distorted outlook. Fan Kinjao is surrounded by people who can survive, but look at those around her. They are all a bunch of monsters and monsters. Who am I? I have nothing to do with the third prince and concubine. To put it bluntly, after leaving Prince Pinglei's palace, I have no right to stop the third prince and concubine from going to heaven. But as long as she stands in Prince Pinglei's palace, she will. Even if the princess wants to escape, she must obtain my permission. Today is a banquet at the Pinglei Palace. No matter who has an accident here, the Pinglei Palace must bear the unshirkable responsibility. But Panula only hates that her revenge has not been avenged, but she doesn't want to think about what happens if the child in Fanswinning's belly really happens. If it falls, what should the Pinglei Palace do? Panula was trembling with anger and stared at Yan Hanbei. Fanswinning bent her knees and said to Yan Hanbei, "The third prince had a miscarriage some time ago and has been depressed since then. She must have been a little touched by the situation today, so she did some crazy things. I hope Princess Pinglei will forgive her. It would be fine if these words were said by other people, but it would be too harsh if they were said by Fanswinning." This is clearly rubbing salt on Panula's wounds. In an instant, Panula's eyes turned red, and she clenched her fists to resist the urge to seek revenge on Fanswinning. Of course Fanswinning knew that even if Panula hated her to death, he would not dare to face her in front of so many people, unless Panula really didn't want to be the third prince's concubine. Han Jingchen was so disgusted that he vomited when he saw Fanswinning's triumphant appearance. Even the eighth and second prince's concubines felt nauseated. They couldn't understand how there could be such a hateful person in this world. Fanswinning didn't care about the opinions of the people around her. After waiting for a long time and seeing Panula holding back her intention to take action, she turned around and wanted to leave first. Unexpectedly, just when she turned around, her foot suddenly slipped. Plop! By the time everyone came to their senses, Fanswinning had already fallen into the lake. Everything happened so suddenly that no one could see clearly what was going on. Han Jingchen looked at the eighth prince and concubine beside him. "How did you fall in?" "Eighth princess. To be honest, I am also very confused. Help, help me, here comes someone." In the lake, Fanswinning waved her hands randomly, struggling in panic, and her calls for help were so helpless. But the people on the shore watched indifferently, and no one even shouted for help. These people present today, in addition to the princes and concubines, also have well-known daughter-in-laws in the main city. To put it bluntly, they are all people's wives. Who can tolerate Fanswinning's gloating behavior just now? The so-called evil will be punished. I am afraid it is nothing more than this. A figure suddenly walked out of the crowd. "Hurry up and save the person. Remember not to touch Aunt Fan's belly. You must lift the person and push her to the shore. And you, go and get your cloak quickly, and prepare to come out to a clean room. Let someone boil some hot water and some silver charcoal. After fumigating the house in advance, open the windows for ventilation." While everyone was stunned, the man had arranged everything in an orderly manner. But what people didn't expect was that that person was not Princess Pinglei, but the Crown Princess. The relationship between the Crown Princess and Aunt Fan was a sensation in the main city. As long as you are born and raised in the main city, who doesn't know about Aunt Fan occupying the magpie's nest and driving the Crown Princess out of the Fan family? Even now, the Crown Princess is nominally a fatherless person. Normally speaking, the Crown Princess and Aunt Fan would be incompatible with each other, but now it is the Crown Princess who is the first one to help save people. Everyone said they couldn't understand it at all. "Don't touch me. I belong to the third prince. How can I be touched by you despicable things? Let me go." In the lake, Fanswinning broke away from the boys who had swam to her side. Even though she was given a few more mouthfuls of lake water, she still didn't want the boys to touch her. Yan Hanbei couldn't bear it, let alone other people, being so ungrateful. Since she doesn't know what's good for her, why should we worry about it? Everyone has seen it, and she didn't let others save her. Yan Hanbei walked to Fan Qingjiao's side, and even thought about the excuse for being interrogated afterwards. Fan Kinjao said, if this matter happened to other people, it might be possible to explain it clearly, but if it happens to the third prince, even if you and King Pinglay have 10,000 mouths, you still won't be able to explain it clearly. These people are watching. How many people do you think would dare to testify in front of concubine Yu? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 727. Chapter 727 is correct. What kind of existence is concubine Yu? Does anyone in the main city know about her? Not to mention other people, even Yan Hanbei himself could not help but twist his legs and stomach when he thought of confronting concubine Yu. Looking at Fan Kinjao again, he had already taken out a purse from his sleeve. There are 100 taels of silver notes and broken silver in it. No matter whose maid is today, as long as she can save Aunt Fan from the third prince's mansion, she will go ashore. All the money in it belongs to her. In the main city, even the housekeeper of Jaomen Mansion's monthly salary is only a few taels of silver, and as for the monthly salary of the maids and servants, it is only a few taels of silver. Fan Kinjao can make 100 taels at a time, which is enough for ordinary people to live for several years. Seeing the purse held high in the air by Fan Kinjao, not to mention the maids accompanying him in various mansions, even the female relatives present were stunned and speechless. It's not that they feel sorry for the money, but if they use 100 taels to save someone who has harmed them, they will never be able to do it. Even the 8th princess was dumbfounded this time. Princess, this is... Han Jingchen sighed, I guess he is possessed by a ghost. At this moment, few people can understand Fan Kinjao. Even many people think that Fan Kinjao is just showing off, using such actions to prove his kindness and kindness. But when Yan Hanbei looked at Fan Kinjao's purse held high in the sun, it made his eyes soar. Others don't know it, but she has to know that all Fan Kinjao did was for the Pinglay Palace. How lucky you are to have friends like this. Plop, plop. Soon, some maids jumped into the lake. This time, Fan Swinning did not struggle anymore and allowed the maids to work together to lift the person ashore. At the Pinglay Prince's mansion, the maids who had been waiting on the shore quickly wrapped their cloaks around Fan Swinning's body, and quickly brought hot tea to help him ward off the cold. Fan Kinjao threw his purse to the maids who were rescuing people, and then quickly asked the maids to carry him to the house. But at this moment, there was a commotion outside the yard. As everyone looked, they saw Princess Yunyu. Accompanied by several palace attendants, he came over. Good luck, what happened? As soon as he entered the door, he asked questions, which was indeed Yunyu's style. Facing Yunyu's question, no one of the female relatives present dared to speak. Yunyu walked to the shore in a few quick steps. Looking at Fan Swinning, who was wrapped in a cloak, with messy hair and water stains all over her body, she worriedly rushed over and hugged him in her arms. Fan Swinning visibly stiffened, but soon bowed her head obediently. What the is going on? Yunyu frowned and looked at Pan Yulu who was standing aside. Princess Yunyu, calm down. We just had a few words by the lake. Princess Pinglay likes to joke and doesn't care about the depth. I think she frightened Aunt Fan and she couldn't stand still, so she fell into the lake. These words are not meant to appease anger, but they are clearly meant to support fire. Yan Hanbei looked at Pan Yulu in shock. She didn't know that Pan Yulu was capable of telling lies with her eyes open. Pan Yulu would be filled with hatred whenever she thought about her unavenged revenge. Now that she had the chance, she wanted to get it back. Yunyu frowned and asked Yan Hanbei, are all the people in your house dead? Don't you know how to save people? Yan Hanbei suppressed the anger in his heart and was about to speak, but he didn't want to be interrupted by Pan Yulu. I think there are rules in this house. It's not that strict. The servants in the mansion have not been strictly trained. They were all frightened and stood there for a long time, which was a waste of time to save people. Boom dash. A muffled sound suddenly sounded, and Pan Yulu, who was still standing on the shore talking, was actually kicked into the lake. Everyone looked at the third princess struggling in the lake, and then at the initiator, Princess Ping Lai. The picture was so exciting that they didn't know what expression to show. The boys who just climbed ashore have to jump in to save people. At this moment, Yunyu found a reason to vent. What is Princess Pinglay trying to do? She did such a bad thing in broad daylight. Could it be that she wants to silence everyone standing here today just because she has a guilty conscience? No. Fan Swinning's lower abdomen was experiencing severe cramping pain, and something was flowing out from underneath. How could she not be afraid, as she wanted to give birth to this child safely? But just when she was about to ask Yunyu for help, Pan Yulu, who was dragged ashore by the boy, took the opportunity and said, "Princess Yunyu must give it to me. Make the decision. Princess Pinglay wants to kill me." Pan Yulu coughed awkwardly and quietly looked away from Fan Swinning. Yan Hanbei stood still and did not move. Now that she had taken action, she thought of bearing all the consequences. At worst, she would be demoted to a civilian again, but it was not like she had never been demoted before. A figure suddenly walked up to her. Quiet, yet extremely firm and steady. Yan Hanbei looked at Fan Kinjao, who was walking beside him, and his heart trembled. Although she never thought about asking Fan Kinjao to help her stand out, the moment she saw Fan Kinjao, she felt inexplicably reassured and at ease. Princess Yunyu came halfway, and it's understandable that she doesn't know the real situation. However, Princess Yunyu insists on keeping her mouth shut and accuses Princess Pinglay of murder. "I'm afraid it's a little inappropriate, Fan Kinjao." They seemed to be looking at Yunyu, but the corner of her eye fell on Fan Swinning. She could clearly see Fan Swinning quietly pulling on Yunyu's sleeve, but Yunyu broke away. "I know that the Crown Princess has always been a bodhisattva. No matter how much hatred she has, she can turn hostility into friendship. But with so many eyes watching what happened today, I will definitely ask my father and mother to make the decision. The Crown Princess is partial to Princess Pinglay at this time. It's just inappropriate." As soon as Yunyu opened her mouth, not only did the emperor move out, but the queen was also involved. Yunyu is a princess after all, and the emperor will instinctively be partial. These words are basically a warning to Fan Kinjao that if the entanglement continues, even the queen will be involved, and Fan Kinjao will definitely not be able to end it. This is simply forcing, or even blackmailing Fan Kinjao to let go of the Pinglay Palace. Nowadays, everyone can see that Prince Pinglay is close to the Crown Princess. Even though the third prince clearly asked for the title, Prince Pinglay still attaches great importance to the Crown Princess. It is obvious that Prince Pinglay also wants to join the Crown Prince. But if Fan Kinjao lets go at this time, it will definitely hurt the hearts of King Pinglay and Yan Hanbei. At that time, Bailey Rongs will be able to take advantage of the situation and take advantage of it from the perspective of charity. Fan Kinjao really wanted to sigh. Princess Yunyu is so calculating. No one wanted Aunt Fan to slip and fall into the lake. After the accident, the people from the Pinglay Palace came to rescue her immediately. However, after Princess Yunyu arrived, she opened her mouth and started to ask questions, but she didn't even care about Aunt Fan's life or death. So this really makes people think that Princess Yunyu doesn't care about the child in Aunt Fan's belly, or Princess Yunyu originally wanted to delay Aunt Fan's treatment. As soon as these words came out, everyone present gasped. "Princess, this is... Did you quarrel with Princess Yunyu?" End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 728. Chapter 728. The child is gone. There are indeed many current princes and concubines present, but compared with the native Yunyu, they are not worth mentioning. Since Yunyu came back, which of the princes and concubines has not been pretending to be grandsons while giving way? But look at the crown princess. Not only was he not being used to it, he also pointed at his nose and scolded me. In the sunshine, Fan Kinjao's eyes were dark and heavy, and he stood straight and calm. Such Fan Kinjao reminded everyone present of the man who dared to drag a coffin into the palace, and even more so of the man who brought the daughter of the Hua family to force the merchants of the main city to bow their heads. Yunyu's face turned black and her chest hurt. She really didn't care about the child in Fan Swining's belly, or she was just delaying it on purpose. Fan Swining is just a humble ant who cannot be put on the stage. Even if there are no children in the third prince's mansion for the time being, how valuable can a child born from an ant be? Now that the sixth prince's concubine has given birth to the emperor's eldest grandson, Fan Swining's status, even if he gives birth to a flower, cannot be compared with the emperor's eldest grandson. Since he was born with no status, it would be better to let this child die in a better way. Yunyu really wanted to delay the matter. A concubine's child was not worth much, but if she could use this to make King Pinglai catch his tail and submit to the third prince again, it would be a profit. But unexpectedly, Fan Kinjao made the matter clear directly. The most straightforward thing to do is to say that she did it on purpose. Did Princess Yunyu do it on purpose? Fan Kinjao's voice sounded again, clear and slow. Yunyu. Can someone please sew Fan Kinjao's mouth shut? Fan Kinjao didn't play his cards according to common sense, and now he was so aggressive that he didn't give anyone a break. Yunyu, who was eloquent in his intentions, was actually frozen in place. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts when they saw Yunyu's speechless look. Is it really true that the crown princess was right? Yan Hanbei was so angry that he wanted to kick Yunyu into the lake. He was so insidious and shameless. With everyone's gaze on her, Yunyu could only turn around and look at Fan Swining behind her, pretending to be concerned. At this time, Fan Swining was already covered in sweat, her palm-sized face was pale, and even her breath seemed a little weak. Seeing that Yunyu finally turned around, Fan Swining quickly pulled Yunyu's sleeve, but before she could speak, Yunyu once again cast her eyes on Fan Kinjao, and Fan's body is so weak, Princess, you should have told me earlier. I know that the Crown Princess and Aunt Fan are deeply at odds with each other, but the child is innocent. No matter what, the child should not be involved in this matter. Yunyu's move clearly wanted people to mistakenly think that Fan Kinjao was deliberately refusing to save Fan Swining. After all, everyone in the main city knew that Fan Kinjao and Fan Swining did not get along. But as Yunyu's words fell, those around him who should have resonated and looked at Fan Kinjao with hatred did not react at all. The affairs of Fan Mansion are indeed well known to everyone. The Crown Princess and Aunt Fan are not compatible with each other, and it is well known throughout the city that they are incompatible with each other. It's just a pity that those of them who stood here from beginning to end clearly saw how the Crown Princess saved people, with such urgency and sincerity that no one could doubt her intentions. It was Aunt Fan who took over the magpie's nest and kicked the Crown Princess out of the Fan Mansion. This kind of thing would make anyone hate it, but at the critical moment, it was the Crown Princess who was the first to lend a helping hand to Aunt Fan. With regard to this intention to save people, what else is there to doubt? Yunyu never expected that she would get no response from her words when she threw them out, as if they were lost in the ocean without even making a sound. Pan Yulo stood up and walked over. Of course she couldn't watch Yunyu suffer. She looked at Fan Kinjao and said, Princess Yunyu is the biological sister of the third prince. Is the princess deliberately sowing discord by saying this? Fan Kinjao smiled coldly and asked instead, as the person in charge of the third prince's residence, the third prince's concubine didn't think about how to pressure people to protect the third prince's queen. Instead, she fanned the flames here. Could it be that the third prince's concubine didn't actually want to is the baby in Aunt Fan's belly safe? Pan Yulu. Fan Kinjao's mouth was not the one who spoke, he was clearly a sharp knife that saw no blood. Fan Kinjao made it so obvious that no matter how much Yunyu wanted to delay it, she couldn't. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw that Fan Swinning's body had fainted and there was a pool of blood. Yunyu quickly took Fan Swinning's hand and said, I originally wanted to diagnose and treat Aunt Fan in person, but I didn't expect that the Crown Princess and Aunt Fan are so close as sisters. If that's the case, it's not convenient for me to bother you. With Fan Swinning's current amount of bleeding, both Yunyu and Fan Swinning themselves knew that it would be difficult to save the child. At this time, when Yunyu said these words, the relationship should not be too obvious. With human life at stake, Fan Qingjie was too lazy to argue with Yunyu anymore, so he quickly asked Yan Hanbei to call someone to carry Fan Swinning to the small courtyard where the guests lived. Yunyu took advantage of the crowd surrounding Fan Swinning and whispered a few words into Fan Swinning's ear. This scene happened to be seen clearly by Han Jingchen. Qingjie, please be careful. I just saw Yunyu and I don't know what I told Aunt Fan. Han Jingchen quietly came to Fan Qingjie's side and reminded him softly. Fan Qingjie raised his eyes to look at Yunyu, who was already standing aside, and nodded gently, okay, help Princess Pinglei comfort the other guests. Today is the first banquet hosted by Princess Pinglei. You must not neglect your words. Don't worry, leave it to me. Han Jingchen nodded in agreement, but began to admire Fan Qingjie in his heart. Thinking about the things Princess Pinglei had done, it would be a lie to say that she would not be hated, but Fan Qingjie she was really able to put aside past grudges, and even she was afraid that she would not be able to achieve this kind of tolerance. The servants of Prince Pinglei's mansion were very agile and carried Fan Swinning into the guest courtyard in a quarter of an hour. Fan Qingjie followed closely, waiting for the maids to move Fan Swinning to the bed in a hurry, and quickly took out he picked up the needle bag he carried with him, unbuttoned Fan Swinning's clothes with one hand, and dropped the silver needle toward the acupuncture point for fetal protection with the other hand. The heart-piercing pain made Fan Swinning groan in pain. Fan Qingjie took the soft handkerchief from the shelf nearby and handed it to Fan Swinning's mouth. Fan Swinning endured the pain and looked at Fan Qingjie. She knew she should ask for the reason, but at this moment, she didn't even have the strength to ask, so she could only bite the soft handkerchief resignedly. Fan Qingjie walked around to the other side of Fan Swinning, observing Fan Swinning's physical signs all the time, and the silver needle in his hand kept rising and falling. I don't know how long it took before the pain of the crack was relieved. But when Fan Swinning opened her eyes, the first sentence she got was, "The child is gone." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 729. Chapter 729. Fan Qingjie, do you believe in fate? Fan Qingjie looked at Fan Swinning expressionlessly, as if looking at a stranger. There is no sympathy or pity, just a calm narration of the passing of a life. Pan Yula called Fan Swinning here today, indeed with evil intentions. But if she didn't know that Fan Swinning had designed to kill Pan Yula's child, how could Pan Yula hold a grudge? And just now at the lake, if Fan Swinning hadn't been gloating about her carelessness, she wouldn't have slipped and fallen into the lake. To put it bluntly, she is solely to blame for everything. It was you took away my child on purpose. Fan Swinning looked at Fan Qingjie in a state of collapse and roared. Fan Qingjie was not surprised when he heard this, nor was he even the least bit panicked. He turned around and walked to a round stool aside to sit down. He picked up the teacup on the table and drank gently. He waited until his thirst was quenched before looking at Fan Swinning. He said, "If you want to frame me, it's best to take advantage of the wound below you that hasn't healed yet. Otherwise, when the wound heals, all the evidence that can identify me will disappear." Fan Swinning. Fan Qingjie is teaching her how to frame her? Aren't you afraid? Even though I am of low status, I am carrying a royal heir, Fan Swinning reminded through gritted teeth. Everything is done according to the procedure. What should I fear? The child in your belly has long been stillborn, and the amount of bleeding you just had was visible to everyone. If I remember correctly, there is still a baby on the shore right now. The blood stains you left are such obvious evidence here. How can you just say that you want to slander me? Fan Xuening grabbed the sheets under her body angrily. Fan Qinjiao, don't be too arrogant. Fan Qinjiao put down the teacup in his hand without hesitation, propped up his cheeks, and looked at Fan Xuening lazily, but his black eyes were so cold that people didn't dare to look closely. It's not that I'm too arrogant, it's Fan. My aunt learned all her medical skills from the dog's belly. Fan Xuening. She just couldn't figure out why Fan Qinjiao was so annoying now. Fan Qinjiao was not afraid of Fan Xuening's gaze. She felt that the child in Fan Xuening's belly was innocent, but this kind of kindness was limited to that innocent child. But just now, whether she was treating or taking out the child, she was always there. Evidence was left on Fan Xuening's body. The story of the farmer and the snake will never happen to her. Furthermore, now she is no longer the eldest lady of the Fan family who lets people rub her around, but the future crown princess. I'm pretty sure there's nothing wrong with my treatment. Don't ask an imperial doctor for confirmation. Even if you really alert the imperial doctors at the imperial hospital, I won't be afraid. Fan Qinjiao looked at Fan Xuening and smiled, of course, if you have the ability. Fan Xuening's chest was beating with anger, and his vision went black. The most hateful thing is that she, who has also studied medicine, knows very well that what Fan Qinjiao said is true. Did you hear what Princess Yunyu said to me? Just now, Yunyu quietly told her that she must bite the child who was killed by Fan Qinjiao. Yunyu has been delaying your treatment. I have just said what the purpose is. Yunyu seems to be forced to compromise so that you can get treatment, but in fact, she has long seen that your child cannot be saved at all. Otherwise, with Yunyu's tact, how could he easily admit defeat? It was just a little trick. Fan Qinjiao didn't take it to heart at all. Fan Xuening was so angry that she couldn't vent her anger. He almost wanted to suffocate her to death. Fan Qinjiao is right. Everything today was Yunyu's plan and her own carelessness. What does it have to do with Fan Qinjiao? Fan Qinjiao saw that Fan Xuening was silent, and he himself was also silent. I don't know how long it took before Fan Xuening spoke again. You should be happy to see me in this state of decline, right? Fan Qinjiao came to his senses and nodded. Well, yes, I am very happy. Fan Xuening. But you don't need to feel aggrieved, because you don't deserve sympathy at all. From the moment you decided to be the third prince's concubine, you should have the awareness to be in the hands of others, right? Bailey wrongs plotted against Yunyu last time. Although Yunyu compromised on the surface, how could she swallow it in her heart? Therefore, it is obvious that Yunyu today was prepared. Even if Fan Xuening did not accidentally fall after entering the lake, Yunyu was afraid that she might have a way to make her lose the child. This child seems to be a weapon to threaten Prince Pinglei's submission to Bailey wrongs, but in fact it is Yunyu's selfish intention to take revenge on Bailey wrongs. As for Bailey wrongs, there is no way he would fall out with his relatives over a concubine's child. Fan Xuening's face turned pale. She knew that Fan Qinjiao's words hurt her heart, but she had no way to refute. She didn't know how she got to where she was today. In her dream, everything was going smoothly for her. She had the care of her mother, the favor of her grandfather and father, and even the favor of the third prince. And Fan Qinjiao is just in her hand. But now, everything seems to be reversed. Looking at Fan Qinjiao again, Fan Xuening suddenly gritted her teeth and said, the person the third prince loves most is me. From the beginning to the end, no one can take the third prince away from me. In the future, when the third prince sits on, if he takes that chair, the only one who is qualified to stand next to him is me. If these words were heard by others, they would only sigh at Fan Xuening's boldness. But Fan Qinjiao, who had experienced everything, only felt that these words were harsh. Aunt Fan is very confident. I really admire her courage. Fan Kinjao looked at the determination in Fan Swinning's eyes and felt that Fan Swinning seemed to know something. Fan Swinning gritted her teeth and said, "What I said is the truth." Since Aunt Fan is so convinced, she should know very well how you should answer if Princess Yunyu asks, and what the outcome will be if this matter comes before the emperor. I believe Aunt Fan knows very well. Fan Kinjao, without arguing, he stood up and walked out. Fan Kinjao, do you believe in fate? Fan Swinning looked at Fan Kinjao's back and suddenly shouted. Fan Kinjao stopped, his hands and feet felt cold for a moment. Same words, same tone, so familiar. In the last life, Fan Swinning humiliated her in such a condescending manner, watching her life drain out little by little, and then proudly asked her if she believed in her fate. Fan Swinning stared at Fan Kinjao's back, as if he wanted to find something from Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao's heart beat like a drum. She always felt that Fan Swinning seemed to know something, but now she couldn't reveal anything. Her identity in the previous life involved too many things, such as medical classics, Fan knew. If Fan Swinning really has memories of her previous life, the consequences will be disastrous. Thinking like this, Fan Kinjao suppressed the uneasiness in his heart, turned around and looked at Fan Swinning coolly and said, "Aunt Fan is so tossing, she doesn't seem like a person who believes in fate, but if Aunt Fan really thinks that everything is fate, I have nothing to say about the arrangement. I can only wish Aunt Fan to enjoy this fate." Fan Swinning. I waited and waited, but in the end I was still beaten by Fan Kinjao. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 730. Chapter 730. Invincible, overwhelming all directions. Fan Kinjao's figure quickly disappeared into the room. Fan Swinning lay weakly on the bed, looking at the empty surroundings, feeling very anxious in her heart. She always believed that everything in the dream was what she had experienced, otherwise it would not be so real. She felt that Fan Kinjao should also know, so she worked hard to change something. But now it seems that Fan Kinjao doesn't know anything. Although at the end of the dream, the third prince was forced into the palace by Bailey Fengming, and she herself died at the hands of Bailey Fengming, but before that, she had already enjoyed all the glory and wealth. At that time, she was really inferior to one person, even concubine Yu had to give in when she saw her. Fan Swinning remembered that Bailey Fengming in the dream did not really die of illness, but had been hidden away by Queen Zhengzi to recuperate. It was precisely because of this that the third prince ignored Bailey Fengming's existence and ultimately fell short of success. Fan Swinning still remembers how sad Bailey Fengming felt when he saw Fan Kinjao's mutilated body. In her dream, Fan Swinning was still wondering why Bailey Fengming knew Fan Kinjao, but she never expected that when she returned to the main city again, Bailey Fengming would already be entangled with Fan Kinjao. Just like this, everything began to deviate from her dream. Fan Swinning's heart beat violently, and her fingers clenching the sheets involuntarily tightened again. So, is it only when Fan Kinjao and Bailey Fengming are completely separated that everything will return to the dreamland? But the way Fan Kinjao looked just now made Fan Swinning have to suspect that Fan Kinjao didn't know anything at all. If that was true, then her dream was probably just a dream. How long are you going to lie down? You will follow me into the palace to meet my mother and concubine and my father Yunyu, who had come to see Fan Swinning, opened the door and ordered with a frown. Fan Swinning came back to her senses, lowered her eyes and said, "I have just had a miscarriage and have difficulty moving. Please forgive me, Princess Yunyu." Yunyu looked at Fan Swinning in disbelief. She didn't believe that Fan Swinning didn't understand what she meant. Your child couldn't be saved after you fell into the lake. Why are you here feeling sorry for yourself now? Do you really think that you can't save your child? Fan Kinjao wants to save your child. Fan Swinning's child is gone. This is an indisputable fact. As long as the matter is brought to the front of the father may not severely punish Prince Pinglay and Fan Kinjao, but everyone will think that Prince Pinglay is responsible for his relationship with the prince. The concubine only got angry when she got close. This is enough. She wanted to see who would dare to get close to the prince after this incident. Stop talking nonsense and follow me into the palace. I'll tell you what to say later on the way. You, and Fan? And Fan? Fan Swinning, Yunyu was ordering, but unexpectedly when she looked towards the bed again, then he saw Fan Swinning fainting. Yunyu quickly walked over and put her hand on Fan Swinning's wrist. When the pulse is hidden, it can only be found by pressing and pushing the muscles and bones. Did he really pass out? Useless things, good opportunities are wasted. Yunyu wanted to slander Fan Kinjao, but she also knew how Fan Swinning's child was lost. The imperial doctor in the palace would know it after an examination, so she planned to let Fan Swinning speak for herself. Even if she was exposed afterwards, it would be embarrassing. It was only Fan Swinning, but it still served the purpose of killing the chicken to scare the monkeys. If Fan Swinning is carried into the palace now, wouldn't she be asked to say the rest? Yunyu is not stupid, so of course it is impossible for her to get involved. Seeing that Fan Swinning would not wake up for a while, Yunyu could only turn around and leave with a cold face, but did not see Zhu Chai, who was quietly inserted into the lower back by Fan Swinning. Pan Yula was in the flower hall at this time, looking at Fan Kinjao with a sneer. If Yunyu hadn't greeted her in advance today, of course she wouldn't have dared to blatantly attack Fan Swinning's child. Now the child must not be saved. Yunyu went to Fan Swinning at this time to make things worse, but she just sat quietly, waiting to see Fan Kinjao's jokes. Just as Pan Yula was thinking about it, she saw the clouds and moon go and come back. Go and inform the people at the third prince's residence to take Aunt Fan back. The miscarriage hurt her body, so she needs to take good care of herself when she goes back. Yunyu dropped these words and turned to leave. Pan Yula was confused. Where is Princess Yunyu going? Of course I'm going back to the palace now. Fan Swinning was unconscious and couldn't speak. If she didn't go back to the palace, did she still plan to stay and finish the meal? Pan Yula. Why is it different from the original agreement? Seeing Princess Yunyu leaving, Pan Yula couldn't help but laugh. She hurriedly called for people to go back to the mansion, and then took the unconscious Fan Swinning back home first. Fan Kinjao was not surprised by this. She has made it very clear to Fan Swinning that even if she gets into trouble in front of the emperor, she is confident enough to escape. If Yunyu wants to push Fan Swinning out and take advantage of her, it depends on whether Fan Swinning is willing. The result is obvious, Fan Swinning is unwilling. Although Fan Kinjao didn't know how Fan Swinning made herself faint and escaped Yunyu's mercy, it was enough as long as the result was good. Although there was a lot of unhappiness today, the banquet was hosted by Prince Pinglay's palace after all. Everyone was still very respectful to Prince Pinglay's palace and waited until dinner was over before leaving one after another. And just when everyone was taking the initiative to say goodbye to Princess Pinglay, Princess Pinglay took the initiative to send the crown princess out. Even King Pinglay, who had been accompanying the male guest in the front, also came together. The scene was just like the princess. It's as pleasant and warm as when you first arrived, making people envious, jealous, and hateful. Fan Kinjao didn't think it was necessary. I guess the male guests haven't completely left the table yet. King Pinglay should go back and greet the male guests. King Pinglay continued to see Fan Kinjao out without caring. I have heard that the crown princess in the backyard today is overwhelming all parties with her own strength. She is invincible. The crown princess has worked hard today, and I personally send her off. Fan Kinjao. Yan Hanbei nodded and said in agreement, that's true. Thanks to the crown princess today, otherwise I don't know what kind of trouble would have occurred. Facing such a harmonious couple, Fan Kinjao, what can he say besides being silent? Han Jingchen looked at Yan Hanbei and said, to say that Princess Pinglay is still domineering today, she actually kicked the third prince's concubine directly. Seeing that the third prince's concubine was holding her stomach when she left, it can be seen that she was kicked hard. Yan Hanbei coughed, glanced at Fan Qingjao and said, I have to thank the crown princess for this. I once saw the crown princess doing something, and I was quite shocked at the time. Now I understand that only a slap on the face can do anything, call it happy. Fan Qingjao. Can this also be transferred to her? End of this chapter.